Hello, Compass.
Hello.
Well, that meeting was informative. What the shit was all that about? Just so you know. Chris called me after a deal that we were working on for 2 years. And Chris made a real estate deal happen for me that I believed was never, ever going to make it to close. And he called and he said, would you come to one of our meetings and talk about storytelling? And I said, immediately, yes. And then I got off the phone and I was like, oh, crap. What? I just came back from Europe. I bring tours to Europe. They put my name on a European river cruise and 38 people signed up, which means my partner Steve and I got to go free. And then they pay me after because people want to travel with me. So I came back last Friday and Chris called and he said, you know, the meeting. I said, no, I realize. It's coming up on Tuesday. Now, what do you want me to do? And he said, I want you to give the class that you gave to me, which was an 8-week class, 3.5 hours a night for 8 weeks. And the 9th week, the 12 students would get up and tell their 8-minute story. He said, I want you to give that class in a half hour. And I said, you're full of shit. Is what you are. So I thought what I would do is share a few stories because all of us have them. All of us have those moments in life that have a beginning, a middle, and an end. You don't have as many as I do, young man, but we all have them. And when we stand in our truth and we tell those stories with that beginning, with that middle, and with that end, there's something that happens between two human beings that is real. I spend my life either listening to people's stories, because I have this TV show where we go to 13 communities. I spend 4.5 days for 13 weeks in these communities listening to people's beginning, middles, and ends. And we take those back to a studio and edit them, and they stand in their truth on a TV show that plays in 28 markets in 6 states. And it's the art of being able to listen that I've learned much better than I have in talking. If I'm not doing a TV show, I am spending time in front of companies, corporations, telling my stories as entertainment. I was talking to Kyle and Meg about in 2018 I was hired their 75th anniversary, and what they made me do is to come into their office in Brookfield and talk to people, person after person after person. 3 meetings I had to come to because they wanted me to learn their culture. In my mind, it was like, I don't care. I was there 3 times. The first time I got there, they were all in a boardroom. They all had white shirts that were pressed, and ties and dark slacks. Those are pants, by the way. And I was like, am I auditioning for the Book of Mormon? What the hell is this? Like, they were all really show up at the 75th anniversary where I had to do an hour of material and talk about the fact that I don't really care about your culture. You know, I don't care that this is a beautiful office for Compass. I don't care that can I tell you, your website is remarkable. I was digging around yesterday, digging around this morning. Really great website. What I care about as a consumer, as somebody who's not a realtor, somebody who has no idea what you guys really do. I got a moment of it this morning sitting in on your meeting. What I care about is Chris Mullenbach. Why? Because Chris Mullenbach answers every phone call. I call and he always answers. And if not, it comes back in a second. He walks me through a deal that you may not realize this about me, but I'm really type A and I'm sort of nervous about everything. Chris is always like, going to work out great. That's what I care about. That's the culture of Compass to me, Chris. And that phone call and walking me through, we have done a dozen deals together. Not only am I a TV guy, not only do I do corporate work, not only am I the spokesman, which I'm sure you're going to get sick of Network Health Medicare commercials because I am their yearly paid spokesman. I also own a dozen corporate rentals in a funky little building in downtown Milwaukee that I have made an incredible business out of, thanks to Chris Mullenbach. Because I'm always calling saying, I think I want to buy, I think I want to sell. This is Chris. Great. We'll get it done. There's a guy who lived across the hall from me who I called him and I said, I want to buy your unit because I want to break through and expand my unit so that I can have 27 windows to Lake Michigan. And the guy said, I want to buy your unit. And I thought, oh Christ, the man died. I know. May he rest in peace, but I called Chris and I said, the guy died! Call somebody! Chris made it happen. The guy's younger wife did not get the condo in his will. The two daughters who lived in Oregon got it. Chris called the daughters in Oregon. He got a hold of them. They sold it to me. I expanded. I have 27 windows to Lake Michigan. I called Chris and I said, there's a woman who lives on the other side. Would you get a hold of her? He got a hold of her. She wasn't interested in selling. She died!
This is starting to sound
Right. I don't know if Chris had anything to do with it. She died. Two daughters, both live in Atlanta. One's a lawyer. Call them, Chris. Are you interested in selling? No, we're not interested in selling. Fine. 3 months later, I said to Chris, do you think we can, let me call them. They're interested in selling. It was July of 2022 that we got the news that they wanted to sell. September of 2022, we got an accepted offer. One party listing. Accepted offer. January 6th closing. January 6th came and went. April 10th closing. Came and went. I was like, this is never gonna get to close. Chris was like, it's all gonna work out. It's all gonna be great, John. Don't worry. They're just not ready. There's something emotional about all of it. And I completely understand because she lived in that place. Their mom lived in this place for a very long time. And it was still full of all of their mom's stuff. They would come up from Atlanta. And the first time they came up to get rid of mom's stuff, to go through mom's stuff, she made it through the recipe box in 3 days. And I called Chris and I said, we're never gonna close. This is never gonna happen. We closed on July 31st of this year. And we busted through. I will have 4,000 square feet of living in downtown Milwaukee with 34 windows to Lake Michigan.
nice.
Chris. It's that story that I tell people. People have no idea that that I've got real estate. Like, I don't share that except with real estate people. But I do share the fact that television-wise, I'm going to tell you a story. I came back to Milwaukee in 2000, and I came back to do a show called Share Madness. And right after I started doing Share Madness, I got hired by Channel 4 to do a thing called the Daily Dish McGivern Style, where I was paid to write a 3-minute essay. And every Friday morning, I would stand in front of a green screen and talk about what's best about living in this community in southeastern Wisconsin. because I moved away forever, and I compared it to living in Chicago and Los Angeles and San Francisco and Portland and Tampa and DC, all of the places that I made my way to and from, and to come back to Milwaukee. So I did that every Friday. The first day on the Daily Dish McGivern Style, they had me come in on Thursday to rehearse my 3-minute essay. And so they had the floor director put it in the teleprompter. They said, when the light goes on in the teleprompter, that means you're live, and you start reading your 3-minute essay. So I showed up that Friday morning, 6:15. At 6:20, I was standing in front of the green screen where the weathermen stand. And you couldn't tell it was the weatherman's green screen because they created a virtual studio for me. And it looked like, oh, McGivern has his own studio. And on the desk at the time was Susan Kim, who was still working for Channel 4, and a guy named Andy Trinan. And Andy Trinan was introducing the brand new segment, the Daily Dish McGivern Style. And as they're introducing it, the robotic camera is coming close. And it stops right in front of me, in front of the green screen, and the light goes on. And there on the teleprompter is no script. It's me looking at me. So for 17 seconds, this is what you saw. About 10 seconds into that, the phone in my pocket rings loudly, and this is what you saw, which was me trying to turn off my phone. But at home, you couldn't hear the phone ringing. So at home, all you thought was, he's not saying anything, and now he's touching himself. 18 seconds in, Susan Kim runs, and the words start piling up, and I get through not even a quarter of it, and the light turns off on the teleprompter, and Andy Trinan throws it to commercial and falls off his anchor chair laughing. And he said, "Hey, McGivern, welcome to the morning show." I was like, "You're an ant." I get to the car. There's one new voicemail. It's my mom calling from Grafton, Wisconsin, and this is what she said. "Oh my God. Oh God, are you having a stroke? Oh, for Christ's sake, you just touched yourself." First day. My first show in my hometown of Milwaukee. If you go to YouTube, you can find a few of those. The first one you will never, ever see. I talk about telling my stories, which is what you spend your lives doing. Relating to people, telling stories, trying to find what I call common ground, because we all have it. We all have it. I tell these stories all over the United States. I talk about being an Irish Catholic, third of 6 kids, parochial schools, ex-seminary, almost a Franciscan. I tell these stories believing that they're so specific, that they're so only mine. And this is what I hear from so many people all over the country. The names are different. The streets are different. We didn't have as many kids as you did, but the stories are exactly the same. That's exactly what I felt. That's exactly what I went through. And that's the commonness of what we all have as human beings. I realize that we're all so different, but we're all so much the same in so much. I was hired to entertain 350 dentists for their 100th Wisconsin Dental Association. I thought, oh shit, what do I got? I got nothing. I got nothing. So let me put my best dental material together. So this is what I presented to 350 dentists. I told them that there was not a moment in my life that I did not know that I had a dentist I've always had a dentist. As a kid, we went to Vito Marchese. Dr. Marchese on Oakland Avenue on the east side. We'd have to walk down to Vito. And every time you laid in his chair, he'd say, yeah, you can tell you're a McGivern kid. You McGivern kids. Wow. Look at the cavities. Ooh, too much sugar. It's like, oh, crap. And then you'd leave the office, and there on his reception desk was a big bowl of pixie sticks. And those bottles, those wax bottles full of nothing but sugar syrup. And he was pushing the sugar. And he'd say, you McGivern kids, too much sugar. Then I look back and I realized that as kids, we would beg for sugar. We'd say, Mom, can we have Lucky Charms? Because they're Irish. And we're Irish. And they're magically delicious. And my mom would say, no. My mom always said no. Mom, we're cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Mom, we're totally cuckoo. No. Mom, can we get Tricks? Because they're for kids. And we're kids. No. My mom was always bringing home all brand. All brand. We were the most regular kids on the block. The truth is, I didn't mind the taste of all brand. It's just that there were no decent prizes in there. What the hell were you going to get out of a box of all brand? A free rectal thermometer? Like a suppository whistle? It just wasn't going to happen. So we had to have sugar in our system first thing. If we didn't get it in the form of sugar cereal, we would take it in the form of a Pop-Tart. And if that wasn't available, we would have a waffle with syrup on it. After all, a waffle is just a sponge that allows you to get more sugar into your head. But for us on the east side of Milwaukee, the purest form of sugar, growing up in the late 50s, early 60s, we would take a piece of white bread and we would butter it up and we would pour sugar all over it. And then we would wad it up into a ball and shove it into our mouth. All in one bite. We were mainlining back at that age. And the kind of sugar that you liked the most was always chocolate. And there was always one kind of chocolate that you wouldn't eat a second time. Hershey's baking chocolate. Yeah, sound of an experienced taste tester. The bitter taste of baking chocolate is the single most significant learning experience your taste buds ever had. Now all I have to do is hear the words baking chocolate. This is what I do. And you kind of feel guilty, like nobody ever offered it to you. Nobody ever said, try this. It tastes like crap. You discovered this on your own. There I was, 8 years old, alone in the kitchen. Saw up in the cupboard, there's a giant candy bar up in the cupboard. One little square. Who's gonna know? It's the perfect crime. So you climbed up there, popped off that square, popped it in your mouth, and it was like, it instantly turned to brown drool. It was trailing behind me on the carpet like a murder path. It was clear to me that the house had been booby-trapped. Anything I ever perceived of being a treat was not. Have you ever had a bouillon cube? You didn't know. You're thinking it's wrapped in gold foil. It's gotta be candy. One little cube, who's gonna know? It's the perfect crime. You unwrap that cube. You pop it in your mouth. This is the closest thing to a fur ball you've ever had. What the hell is this? Is it like a dehydrated space treat? It's the only time in your life that you ever wished you had a dental suction hose on you. Do you remember the sound of that dental suction hose catching the fleshy side of your cheek? And you couldn't tell that dentist to stop. It was like, hold off. Hose away. Enough with the hose! They sucked all the moisture out of your head. And their first suggestion was spit. That's all I've got. It's very dry. Then it was time for the fluoride, that cherry clocky comet sand agent. And then what was with the rinse? Do you remember the rinse? It was that paper shot glass. It was like a Wendy's ketchup dispenser cup. It was half full of water. Water. Is this all the water in there? You knew they had more water. You saw it in the ever-flushing toilet sink. Water, water, I just need water. Then you couldn't retain the water because your face had been Novocained and you were dribbling all over yourself because you couldn't possibly be protected by that one square of bounce fabric softener hanging from the mini jumper cables. You knew you were going to fry. And why? Too much sugar. I'm in the middle of this speech to the dentists, and some drunk dentist from Brown Deer, as it turns out, I don't know what that means, but that's where he was, yelled, "Hey! Do you floss?" What the hell? This is what comes at a dental conference. I said, time out, and I walked off the stage, and we had a conversation about the numbers. You know the numbers? When you go to the dentist, and the tech does the numbers, where it's like 2, 2, 2, 7. I asked them to please change that and do a color code, and don't be so terribly making us all feel so guilty. And they agreed that it was a great idea. Stories. I depend on the stories of my life, and my suggestion to all of you is that you need to depend on the stories of yours. My pleasure.
Right.